Radical Radio Collective.
Good afternoon, grubs. You're tuned in to 4ZZZ 102.1 FM. This is Eco Radio, Australia's longest running peace and environment radio show. We're taking over your middle of the day, middle of the week, start of the month airwaves. My name's Dave, my pronouns are he, him, and I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians on the country on which we broadcast. We're located in the city of Mungingin on Turrbal, Yugga and Yugambeh land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Cubby Cubby and Yinnabarra country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east, we pay our respects to the Quandamooka people, and down south, we reach the Commonwealth, Nagarragwal, Mununjali, Wanjerabara, Yugambeh, and Bundjalung countries. There is no Crown land. And I also want to thank No Idea. Just an amazing show as always, and just amazing time management. Being able to finish a show at exactly the 1 hour mark is a skill I will never possess. But Max and the team seem to do it every week or so. Well, today on the show, we have a jam-packed session for you. We are going to be talking to regular contributor and investigative researcher with the blog We Suspect Silence, Michael Swifte. He's going to be talking to us about the ineffective climate change movements. And then later in the show, we'll be talking to Amanda French from Croc. That is Community Representation of Crocodiles. We're going to be talking about advocating for crocodiles and what's happened to Old Faithful. But before I go to a song, I'll give a quick update on the Freedom Flotilla. Hundreds of activists, including 7 Australians, were arrested and detained in the high-security Ketziot prison near the Israel-Egypt border in the Negev desert. 7 Australian participants have been released now and are on their journey home. Flotilla members have made allegations of prison guards kicking and slapping them, using sleep deprivation techniques and confiscating medication. Surya McEwen, who we've talked to previously on the show, he told officials that he was treated much rougher and forcefully, including being slapped, having his arm dislocated, and having his head slammed into the ground. This is happening to people trying to bring aid to Gaza. It has been 2 years since Israel launched its genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, and more than 67,000 people have been killed in Gaza in that time. Keep your dials tuned to 4ZZZ. This is 50 years in your grubby little ears. I told you it's Gig City this year. No longer Pig City, it's Gig City, including the Gig City gig. Today, I am talking to Michael Swifte, regular contributor and investigative researcher with the blog We Suspect Silence. Michael, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So can you tell me about what you've been researching recently?
Well, recently a right-wing think tank called Page Research Centre published research into the funding of climate campaigning in Australia. Mm-hmm. They've gone to great lengths to paint, to promote their positions on coal and nuclear, and to construct arguments about misrepresentation of renewables and what have you.
Yep.
But I wanted to talk about the information that they provided about foreign philanthropies and their influence on climate campaigning. This was something that I noticed back in 2014. It was the first thing I ever published on my We Suspect Silence blog. Mm-hmm. And I had just been staying up late many nights reading posts on the Wrong Kind of Green website, and had been learning about the influence of philanthropy and how it is basically a money laundering and reinvestment scheme for capitalists to exert influence on activism.
Yeah, so when you talk about the philanthropy being a money laundering scheme, can you tell us some examples of this?
Sure. Well, that Bill Gates transferred a lot of his wealth into the Gates Foundation and then began working around the world on various projects, and some of them have had very negative consequences.
Yeah.
Lots of other wealthy groups have wealthy families have done the same. Companies that produce computers like Hewlett-Packard and many other wealthy people. George Soros sends funds through his Open Society Foundation, and he pioneered the practice of donor-advised funding, where the funds are given to a NGO, and that NGO anonymously selects which projects it wants to support. In the process of doing that, it sets some of the terms on which that funding is given.
Yeah.
And through its power to make selections, it can choose which things have enough money to actually move forward.
Yeah, so can you tell me, how is this money laundering? It sounds more like donating, but, how is this turned into a business?
Well, it's kind of not a business. It's strategic giving.
Mm-hmm.
So you might call it reflexive philanthropy. You may know about some of the big investors like George Soros and people like Warren Buffett, who are known for their reflexive investing. They understand that when they spend a lot of money on a particular industry, that sparks off new industries, and so they get a head start on what to fund in the future.
Right.
So in philanthropy, it can work the same. If you support particular groups with particular ideas, you can shape how the activist sector moves forward and what it chooses to focus on.
Right. So how is this detrimental to the environmental movement?
Well, if you look at the funders who've given money to groups like the Sunrise Project, the Australia Institute, Greenpeace in Australia, they have a particular position on fossil fuel phase-outs that aren't reflected in the positions of the groups that they fund. So the climate campaigners in Australia would like to completely phase out fossil fuels. They don't want to give them some room to survive into the future. Whereas if you look at the plans presented by many of the groups that funded Australian climate groups, they actually have a concession position on fossil fuel phase-out. They are happy to accept what they call unavoidable fossil fuels if carbon capture and storage is applied.
Right.
Now, the reason I didn't go and choose carbon capture and storage as some kind of niche area to work in because I wanted to keep writing interesting blogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My position came from spending 2 years running with Ben Pennings running a news feed on the carbon capture boom and the resistance, and I learned a lot about how these things get established, how the revolving doors with governments get established, how laws are quietly developed to make the unthinkable happen. And I thought the most important thing I can do is to learn from that to see what the next phase would be. What would be the next non-conventional fossil fuel boom?
Yeah.
And over a decade, it's been reinforced to me that it's going to be carbon capture and storage. And a lot of people just don't believe that it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's...
I don't think a lot of people would have anticipated that the fracking boom was going to happen either. It seemed unthinkable that they would poison rivers and destroy farmland to get at this really poor source of gas and oil out of the soil.
Yeah, so I haven't been deep in research as you have. So the philanthropy organisations, they fund environmental organisations that also have, I guess, the ideological bent that they have, that you can keep extracting fossil fuels as long as you put money into developing carbon capture and storage. Is that right?
That's right. And, you know, the evidence of these things comes up when you look at the actual language in the fossil fuel phase-out commitments at things like the COPs. So at COP26, when you look at the fossil fuel phase-out commitment language, it specifies, there's a qualifier in there, and it says unabated.
Yes.
Unabated fossil fuels is what they want to phase out. So that means they're retaining an option for abatement. And then when you look at where the investment is going into abatement, you see that there are multi-billion-dollar funds supporting groups like the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative that are building CO2 storage for decarbonisation clusters in the UK.
Right.
And you sort of go, well, it keeps moving forward. These plans to develop carbon capture and storage keep moving forward despite these commitments being made to phase out fossil fuels. But their plans are moving forward because of the qualifiers in the language. So if you look at various beyond coal campaigns, like the ones in Canada and the US, they specify that their opposition is to old coal or traditional coal, not all coal.
Right.
So they in their headlines and in their names, it says they want to move beyond coal, but in the qualifying language, it says that they're prepared to still use coal if there's abatement applied.
So do you have examples of this happening in Australia? Like some of our leading anti-fossil fuel organisations, Move Beyond Coal, Stop Adani, Lock the Gate. Is there evidence that these organisations are being funded by pro-carbon capture storage or not pro-fossil fuel, but continuing in the extraction game?
Well, yes. The three of the foundations that are part of what's called the Design to Win Plan for Philanthropy, the Oak Foundation, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, and the Climate Works Foundation, fund campaign groups in Australia. The Design to Win plan is headed up by a guy called John Podesta. John Podesta was the Biden's climate czar. And John Podesta is also he's the spearhead of the Design to Win plan. So he has brokered funding all over the world for similar organisations to the Sunrise Project that take large funds and break them up into smaller funding, and those funds pass the message on to small NGO campaigns that carry the same absence of a critique of their funders.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean? It doesn't benefit any of these groups to go back and look at the language in the Design to Win plan and go, wait a second, what's this unavoidable coal or unavoidable fossil fuels concession that you have?
Right. Yeah, so it's organisations that may be getting some funding and aren't that worried about where that funding is coming from. I guess the same thing happens at the COP gatherings, where they make concessions to more, like Australia, more resource reliant countries, so that we can keep the economy great or whatever it is. So what organisations should we be wary of here in Australia? Have you been able to find that out?
Are you talking about our climate campaigning organisations?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the whole gamut. It's every member of the Stop Adani Alliance. It's Lock the Gate. It's the Australia Foundation. It's the Sunrise Project. Greenpeace. Market Forces.
Right, they're all getting money from pro-resource companies or organisations.
Yes, and the issue here is that these groups are very subtly pro-resource. I keep describing it as they retain a dangerous concession for a compromise to a commitment to fully phasing out fossil fuels.
Right.
And, I mean, a lot of the issues here come with what these campaign groups aren't funded to do. So if I can give you an example.
Yep.
When Anthony Albanese first got voted in 2022, one of his first acts was to meet with the CEO of INPEX. Now, INPEX are a partner with Woodside, and
Woodside is a mining company?
Yeah, the big gas company in the northwest, so the northern part of Western Australia and Northern Territory. And they have plans for carbon capture and storage, for blue hydrogen production, for export to Japan, South Korea. And one of Albo's first acts was to meet with that CEO and to discuss those plans. And his resources minister, one of her first acts, was to approve carbon capture and storage acreages, exploration acreages, so that they could establish which places were best to store CO2.
Right.
And, 3 years later, BHP announced that they want to import CO2 from various carbon capture projects in Asia to store off Australia's waters. But none of this is reported by anyone in the climate campaign group. It's not of interest to them for some reason. And I would contend that it isn't of interest to them because they're not funded to look at that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And here's another example. There's in Australia we have the Clean Energy Regulator, which is created by the Clean Energy Regulator Act. Now, I had a look at that act because I'm very interested in what leaders mean when they say clean energy, because often when you unpack their rhetoric about clean energy, you discover that they retain a concession for carbon capture and storage.
Yeah.
You sort of go, well, does that mean that you think carbon capture and storage is also clean energy? So I had a look at the Clean Energy Act, and in any act that you look at, there's a list of definitions, and those definitions are legally defining terms in those acts. You know what I mean? You know that when they use that particular word, it has a particular meaning.
Yep.
Well, the term clean energy isn't defined in the Clean Energy Act. So I called up the Clean Energy Regulator and I said, how do you guys operationally define clean energy? And they couldn't tell me. This is the person answering the phone, and the Clean Energy Regulator couldn't tell me what clean energy means.
Yeah, so
if you read the Act, you go, well, what does clean energy mean?
So have you been able to find out?
Sorry?
Have you been able to find out?
No, but I can make a reasonable guess, and that is that it includes carbon capture and storage.
Mm.
And that's based on statements by the International Energy Agency, by Justin Trudeau, by any number of leaders who've used the term rhetorically.
Right.
I mean, I wrote a piece called "Clean Energy is a Dirty Joke" back in 2016, just as Trump got elected for the first time. And I've been tracking the use of that term, and I've found innumerable examples of leaders saying clean energy and then unpacking what their plans are, and you can see that it includes carbon capture and storage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I might sound like a crank to some people, or someone who's obsessed with something that people think is a boondoggle, or something that's never going to happen, or it's just marketing or something like that. But it just keeps creeping forward, and if we're not prepared to challenge the people that fund us as campaigners, I mean, not me because I don't get funded by anybody, but if we're not prepared to challenge them on what the concession positions that they may hold are, then we're missing the important part of defending the earth and defending our objectives.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's any big secret that billionaires and millionaires and big business and everything want to keep money coming. But we're going to have to end it there. Sorry, Michael. Where can people find out more about your research?
At We Suspect Silence, on WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find me on Twitter at Empathizer.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much for joining me, Michael Swift.
Thanks for talking to me today.
All good. You're listening to 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio. My name's Dave. And on the line, I have Amanda French from the Community Representation of Crocodiles organisation, or Croc. Amanda, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off. Croc is a relatively new organisation, a couple of years old. Can you tell us how Croc came about?
Yeah, sure. So we started about 3 years ago after a high-profile incident where a man filmed a human-crocodile conflict on his GoPro up in the Indigenous community of Wudjil. He had an interaction with that crocodile. The crocodile ate his Rottweiler pet Molly, and that crocodile was shot as a result of that incident. And that was sort of the beginning of our campaign to see a law reform for people behaving recklessly around crocodiles. That would lead to their euthanasia.
Yeah, okay. And we've seen recently that a Croc has been... that Croc, your organisation, has been pushing for the return of an iconic crocodile in the Cape, Old Faithful. Can you tell us about what's happening there?
Yeah, sure. So under the Queensland Crocodile Management Plan, if a crocodile is thought to be behaving as a problem crocodile, which is a particular set of criteria, that crocodile will be removed from the environment. So we became aware of Old Faithful being removed around the 8th of this month. And Old Faithful is a very old and iconic crocodile, and it's a little bit different in the location that he was removed because it is a protected area. So we've got a protected species removed from a protected area, And we have very strong reasons to believe that that crocodile did not actually meet the criteria of a problem crocodile. And we've been doing a lot of stakeholder consultation at the moment with traditional owners and people who were in the know about that situation to understand why that decision was made. And what the outcome will be for Old Faithful, who is currently sitting in a holding facility in Cairns awaiting his transfer to a captive facility, which is very likely to be a crocodile farm. And that's a very sad outcome for a big old threatened species like Old Faithful when we see that occur without, meeting pretty strong criteria.
Yeah, Old Faithful has a long history in the spotlight. You work with Bob Irwin, and Old Faithful became famous from working with Steve Irwin. Can you tell us about that history?
Yeah, so in 1996, Old Faithful was displaying some habituation behaviours, I believe, around getting too close to a campground. So Steve Irwin and some of his team caught Old Faithful in 1996 and hazed him, which is a process that they do to, I guess, frighten the animal so that it becomes fearful of people and stays away. And that was very successful, and Old Faithful has been living very peacefully in Lakefield National Park ever since. And we're in discussions with people at the moment about that situation, because it seems like the department is saying that they believe it's not the same crocodile, which is quite an interesting thing to say. They're claiming that he had a scoot removed in his tail, but we've gone back through the photos and spoken to people who did carry out that hazing activity in 1996 who can confirm that he wasn't scoot cut. So again, it's just trying to get to the bottom of the story and understand, what criteria was behind his removal, and then what the outcome will be for that animal, because it has had quite a ripple effect on the Indigenous community up there, especially traditional owners who have totemic connections to him. And obviously, we don't like seeing crocodiles sent to croc farms. The conditions are not the nicest thing for these big old crocs. And we just want to make sure that there's some transparency around this.
Yeah, right. So the Queensland Environment Department is saying that Old Faithful, the croc that is captured, wasn't the Old Faithful that Steve Irwin hazed?
That's their claim now. So we've been speaking to people today, like I said, who were there. And at the time, they weren't doing scoot cutting. Steve Irwin was a little bit against that in terms of his practices. And we've had a look back at photos of Old Faithful after he was released in 1996, and he didn't have a scoot removed, which is basically a portion of the spiny bits on the tail. So it's quite clear when a croc has had that taken out.
That's for identification purposes?
It's for identification purposes, exactly.
So why is the department being so, I guess, cagey, hopefully, pardon the pun, about their removal of Old Faithful, or of any crocodile in general, I guess?
Well, I guess it's like any department. You've got, people do sometimes make the wrong decisions, and some decisions that are made, they do need to be transparent and accountable when they have made a mistake. So I guess, there's not too many people that care or advocate for crocodiles, and that's why we formed 3 years ago, is because we did feel like, crocodiles did need someone in their corner, especially as a protected species in Queensland. I mean, they're still vulnerable to extinction as far as their listing goes, and they're still considered a recovering population. So, I mean, if this situation happened and it was to a koala or something cute and cuddly, I think, Queenslanders would be up in arms. But, the fact that it's happened to an apex predator, it quite often has a different effect on people, but we're certainly concerned about this one.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because for our listeners or people that might not be aware, crocodiles in Queensland were almost taken to the brink of extinction about 50 years ago. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Before the Protection Act came in, crocodiles in Queensland were hunted to near extinction. So the fact that it's taken so long for them to recover, even to the numbers that they're at now, which is considered there's between 20 and 30,000 crocs in Queensland, and when you compare that to the Northern Territory, which Northern Territory is considered a recovered population, sitting at around 100,000 individual crocs.
Mm-hmm.
We've still got a long way to go. And we've got we should have learnt our lesson from back then as well, to know what impact it would have just to basically have unregulated hunting.
Yeah, and I suppose that also brings home the point that Old Faithful is an old croc, which might not be a regular thing in Queensland at the moment.
That's right. I mean, crocodiles have, from hatchling, they've got such a low success at making it through to the age that Old Faithful is at. He's very big and he's very old. And you can understand that, he would meet the criteria if he was in an urbanised area where he might be at a boat ramp and it's dangerous, if a crocodile has lost its fear of humans there. But this guy was living in a national park, an area that is likened to, Queensland's own Kakadu, because there's so many crocodiles and, it's a conservation area for those animals. I mean, we know that another crocodile was removed at the same time as Old Faithful, who did meet that criteria. He had been lunging at boats and people in a campground. But we certainly don't believe that Old Faithful meets that criteria, and it's why we're ensuring that, there's some transparency around it.
Okay. How can people find out more about Croc?
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. It's croc.qld, Croc Queensland. And we post a lot about this stuff on there, and lots of facts and information about crocodiles and how they're managed in Queensland as well. So, yeah, we would love it if people would follow along and support what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for joining me, Amanda.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having us on and for caring about crocs.
Oh, absolutely. That was Amanda French with the Community Representation of Crocodiles, or Croc.
They tried to bury me. They didn't realise I was a seed.
You're listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future.
You are listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future. Thank you, small child. My name's Dave. This is Eco Radio, and from what we've been talking about on the show today, we just recently talked to Amanda French from Croc. That is the Community Representation of Crocodiles. And earlier in the show, we talked to Michael Swifte, a regular contributor and researcher with the blog We Suspect Silence. Wavy texted in and said, how conscious are all or any of these groups of this funding implication? Individual member awareness. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like when I volunteered with environmental groups, the people on the ground aren't necessarily being told about any of the funding. It's really just what we believed in was best for organisational involvement. So, yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. But if you are looking to volunteer your time, specifically this weekend, specifically just Saturday and Sunday, you might be enjoying this next segment. If you like to be a bit grubby, this is the Bushcare Roundup.
It's the Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
Listen up, grubs. This is the Bushcare Roundup. Saturday at 8 o'clock, you can go to Glindemann Park Bushcare Working Bee. That's Glindemann Park, Logan Road in Holland Park West. At 9 o'clock on Saturday, you can go to the Butterfly Survey at Oxley Creek Common. That's meeting at the Red Shed at the Common off Sherwood Road in Rocklea. On Sunday at 7:30, you can go to Sweeney Reserve Conservation Bushcare Working Bee. That's Sweeney Reserve in Petrie. At 8 o'clock on Sunday, you can go to the Toowong Roving Rehabilitators Bushcare Community Planting. Get your hands dirty at the end of Kent Street in Toowong. At 8 o'clock as well on Sunday, you can go to Welcome Back the Shorebirds at GJ Walter Park in Cleveland. Welcome back, Shorebirds. I've missed you. At 9 o'clock on Sunday, you can go to the Butterfly Bushcare on the Hilltop. That's Sir Samuel Griffith Drive in Mount Cootha. And to round off your Sunday afternoon, an afternoon bushcare. This is happening at 3:30. You can go to the Yeronga Bushcare Working Bee. That's at Nita Street in Yeronga. Thank you so much for listening in today, Grubbies. I'm going to send you off to the coolest cat on radio, Jordan, with Sonic Aliens. Thanks for joining me, Grubbies. I'll see you next week.
For your dose of news, current affairs, and analysis, tune in to 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, 12 to 1 p.m. daily. Only Human, Eco Radio, Paradigm Shift, Megahertz, and Brisbane Line, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday. 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, People-Powered Radio.